everything happened. And so that's why I wrote that book, 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven. And it's about my personal experience in the afterlife and how it completely put me on a better course in my life. Kind of a game changer, Liz, because there's all this interest in people that have had near-death experiences, because everybody can't help but wonder, what's it like? Is there really an afterlife?
Today's guest is Regan Forston. Regan is an esteemed facilitator and former board member, responsible for public engagement at the Newton Institute.
I went through a process with the Newton Institute, and in this process, they helped me to get into a really deep state of relaxation. And the facilitators then helped me to go to the afterlife and back for 3 hours, 33 minutes. We've discovered 6, what we call them stations, or 6 different things in the afterlife that people can experience.
Regan is the author of 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven, which chronicles his personal afterlife experience.
All of a sudden, I realized I was seeing 360 degrees. And then that's when I went, oh, we've discovered 6, what we call them stations, or 6 different things in the afterlife that people can experience.
And now for my conversation with Regan Forston. Hey, everyone. I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually, and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality. Hey everyone, today I am speaking with Regan Forston, and he has just a really interesting career, interesting story. So welcome, Regan. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Yeah, I'll do a bit of introduction, give people a chance to see, or, give them a little snippet of what they're about to experience today. About 9 years ago, I went through a process with the Newton Institute. And in this process, they helped me to get into a really deep state of relaxation. And the facilitators then helped me to go to the afterlife and back for 3 hours, 33 minutes. So it was like having a near-death experience with no death part. And actually, that was part of my training in becoming one of the facilitators. About 5 days into training, the teacher says, okay, tomorrow, there's 16 of us in training. He says, tomorrow, all of you are going to the afterlife. And I kind of went, oh my God, like this is like, because I'd read the books and a lot of the research and, of these 70,000 people now that have done this. And in hypnotherapy school, I was the last one of the class about 15 years ago when I went to hypnotherapy college. I was the last one to experience hypnosis. Everybody else, no problem. But me, I had this monkey mind. I couldn't relax, but I finally did, I had the same fear. I thought, oh my gosh, what if I can't do this, Well, that's what happened. There were 16 of us, 15 of them the next morning. They're all talking about being in the afterlife and all this stuff happened. And I'm just sitting there going, it didn't work for me, But then they worked with me for a few more days, and a couple of facilitators on their own time, where everybody's having dinner, took me in and we did it again. And wow, everything happened. And so that's why I wrote that book, 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven. And it's about my personal experience in the afterlife and how it completely put me on a better course in my life. I think now I've helped hundreds of people to have the same experience because I'm one of 250 facilitators. We're in 45 countries, Liz, and I think we cover about 12 different languages now. The published research is in at least 8 languages, and there's 1 million copies of the research out there right now. People read it, and then they go to the Institute or go to my website, and they go, hey, I want to try that. I want to see if I can go to the afterlife and back. So it's kind of a game changer, Liz, because there's all this interest in people that have had near-death experiences, because everybody can't help but wonder, what's it like? Is there really an afterlife? Is there really a heaven and that sort of thing? Well, now, and I think it has something to do with this new earth everybody's talking about, because this is something that is otherworldly in the sense that it appears that God has opened up a portal now for anybody that wants to go to the afterlife and see that the afterlife is real, can do it. This process. Yeah,
I have some questions before we get too into the process. I have a few things to ask, and then we'll get more into that. First of all, what is the Newton Institute?
Well, Michael Newton was a hypnotherapist back in the 90s. I think it was late 80s, early 90s. He was trying to help somebody lose weight or stop smoking. One of the things that's bread and butter, for people that do hypnotherapy. And it was time for the person to come out of hypnosis, and the person refused. They says, no, I don't want to come out of hypnosis. I want to go home and talk to my friends. And Dr. Newton says, well, okay, I'm going to wake you up and you go talk to your friends. And the person, no, I want to talk to my friends. And all of a sudden, the person in trance is having these conversations with people somewhere. And so Michael asked him, what's going on here? And he was talking to people that had passed on, that were in the afterlife. And so Michael, being an atheist, was like, what? No, he didn't know if he even believed in God or anything. But as it was, he was the perfect person for this to happen to, because he had this research mind, this curiosity. So he figured a way, and he actually helped 7,000 people go through the same experience. And every time somebody's in the afterlife, he would keep pushing the envelope and say, well, ask him about this, and what happens if this, and how does this work, and everything. And slowly he put together, and that's in his first book that's called Journey of Souls. That was what he wrote back in 1995, which I read back in 1995, and I was so excited about it. I called up to get I wanted to go there myself in 1995, and there was a 4-year waiting list. So I'm a young man at the time, and 4 years is like forever. So I just forgot about it, But I didn't remember until I was on my deathbed in Hawaii about 10 years ago. They thought I had stage 4 lung cancer, but it ended up being something called valley fever that you can only get in parts of California, a little bit of Arizona and Mexico. There's a little spore that you can breathe in when you're just walking around, and it gets in your lungs, and it just destroys them. So while I'm laying there, I remembered the book, and I've been a hypnotherapist for about 10 years at that point. 9 or 8 years, I guess. And some people had me do past life regressions, and those were kind of a kick. It was like, wow, I'm sitting next to somebody and they're telling me about a past life, and it's really neat. But I knew this went beyond that. So I says, God, if I get out of here, that's what I want to do. And it was funny, just like seam work. It was like a miracle, Liz, on how it happened, because I was completely broke, was $200,000 in hospital bills, and I'm completely broke. And but I wanted to do this. And then, so I contacted them, and it just so happened that the new training they were going to do was starting in 3 months, 50 miles from where I live. And they do this all over the world. They go to Europe sometime, do training, the East Coast. This time it was right by me. And I told them about my experience, and they said, well, let's see what we could do. And they found a donor to pay part of my tuition. So it was
nice.
I was able to go, just meant to be. It was just meant to be. So, I just blows my mind every day. I think about this, being able to go to the other side and consciously, have conversations with people that are in heaven, with the elders and the guides and the angels and Jesus and Buddha, and it changes everything. You don't have to worry about what a book says anymore. You can get it right directly from them, what's happening.
So I want to ask you, so you said you went in one of the meditations to the afterlife. Yeah. Can you tell us what happened with that? Okay. I don't know how well you know near-death experiences, if it matched a near-death experience. Just tell us tangibly your experience with that happened.
This is like a near-death experience, but it's done in a very scientific way. So the client or me, like when they do it with me, you keep really focused because we prepare to go there. So we write a list of questions that we want to have answered. We write a list of who we want to see when we're over there. I wanted to see my dad, my brother, and my mom, who were dead, and passed on to the other side. It's like done in a very formal, scientific way. Okay, let's see. The best way I could explain to people, because it's 90% successful within 1 or 2 sessions. About 80% of people, the very first time, they just go there and have this life-changing experience. And the other 20% come back for a second. I've had a few for a third and a couple for 4th sessions. But then they all have the experience, So the thing I would say, now, I've actually been 3 times now, Liz, because knowing this process, I can go back to the afterlife anytime I want if I have more questions or if I have more things. I'll kind of go through my session with. So I'm kind of still afraid the second time, because I'm afraid, what if this doesn't happen and everybody in training does but me, and I'm going to feel like a real loser, and I'll feel so disappointed. So I relaxed. He gets me to get my facilitator. Is just talking to me. I'm accepting the suggestions of my body, getting really relaxed, like going to sleep at night. And then all of a sudden, I went through a tunnel, and right at the very end, when I came out at the end, I was actually a Roman soldier. I could feel, even now when I do that, I can feel my legs over this big, massive white horse. It was beautiful, and I was going up and down this thing where people were being crucified. And I remember in my mind thinking, as that person, was my job. These people are nuts. We're just going to kill them all. That's my orders,
This was, you believe, a past life?
Yeah, because of the 70,000 cases we have, the way we get them to the afterlife, Liz, is they go in trance, they go to a past life, they see themselves pass away because they have those memories of that because it happened to them. And then when they leave their body and they're at their funeral or something there, us as facilitators, we say, okay, now what happens next? Who's there to take you back to the afterlife? And they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, here's my guide, or there's an angel here, or sometimes it's a loved one that's there that takes them to their guide or something. And then when we meet the guide, we ask to switch from who they were in that past life, which they're standing right next to, and they're both looking at each other. This is so cool, Liz. You're there, you're looking at who you were in that past life. In that past life, person is looking at you, knowing that's them in the future. And then we talk to the guide and say, can we switch to my client's life, who they are now? So that person who you were in that other life goes back to the afterlife. And then we start communicating with the guide, which is what I did there when I saw myself pass away. My lesson in that lifetime, Liz, when I was on my deathbed, and I can still see her, she looked like, I think she was my daughter. She looked in her 30s.
As the Roman, when you were the Roman soldier, you're back still. Okay, so you didn't die in battle. You're on your deathbed, like you died from natural causes of the time. Yeah. Okay.
I felt I was like in my 70s or something, and I was cursing Caesar, and I swore as I was dying, I will never again do things that I know inside that are wrong to do just because somebody tells me to do it. Because then I realized those people that I killed and all that kind of stuff that I was saying, rationalizing because I'm a soldier, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But that was my lesson in that lifetime, is I'm never, ever going to do that again. Then I passed away. So when I passed away, with me, immediately there was a guide, which I had seen in deep prayer meditation before, and in some dreams that I had over a period of 20 years. The same guide showed up, and his name was Rebazar.
And you've had these dreams in your current life?
Yes, I had those.
Okay.
Again, so to make this all make sense, when I was 4 years old, this is how it all started. When I'm 4 years old, I go to sleep, and all of a sudden, I'm on the ceiling looking down at my body. And I'm 4 years old. I don't understand this. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, I was in my body, and I could see like an orb on the ceiling. And then we keep switching back and forth, and it scared me so much. I ran into my parents' room, and my dad came in the room, took a broom under the bed, and I don't know what to. All I know is this scared me. Okay, so it happened the next night and the next night, and so I began to be afraid to go to sleep. So here's a 4-year-old solution. I sat in bed with my back against the wall, and I tried to hold my eyes open so I wouldn't go to sleep, because I was afraid it was going to happen, because I couldn't understand this, But eventually,
poor little kid.
I know, me at 4 years old. So then eventually I fell asleep. But then when I opened my eyes, there was 2 men standing in my room, and they were in white. Later on in life, I wondered if they were Mormon missionaries, but there was these 2 men in white, and I heard them say, I don't know if they said it or if telepathically or whatever, they said, "It's okay. It's not going to happen to you again. You can go back to sleep." And it was like some wise grandfather or something like this just told me, someone that I trusted. I remember just laying down, going to sleep. And then it never happened again until I was 23 years old. And then I was old enough to not let it freak me out. And that's when I had that, like in my book that I mentioned, and you read that about the, this teaching found me. And it was different. I knew I grew up Christian, Catholic all the way through high school. And I didn't know until college that there was even things like Buddhism or Hinduism or anything, because I'd only been taught one thing, So that started opening me up to the possibility, there's other ways of looking at God, So there's a religion that's still now, it's a wonderful religion or teaching. It's called Ekankar. And when I was inspired to find that was like a dream thing that happened where I was connected, and then I found out this organization, and they gave me, they said, look, if you want to establish a relationship with God, we'll give you some spiritual exercises to do, and then go have your experience with God. So they told me to sing the Hugh, which is an ancient name for God, like Hugh Man, it's Hugh. And you sing it, it's like Hugh. It's like Om or Om or, one of those things. And what it did, so I did it for 6 weeks, nothing happened. And then one night I was doing it, I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden I found myself, out of my body. And I was in this place where the skies were yellow instead of here. I was looking at looked like wheat fields, and there was acres and acres and acres. And about every acre, there were these giant, beautiful, I call them oak trees just because they're thick, and they're, they're really, they look like sentinel, like strong or whatever like this. And all of a sudden I realized I was seeing 360 degrees. And then that's when I went, oh, F. I'm out of my body.
You were seeing 360 degrees, the way a lot of near-death experiencers report being able to see, as if you were, I guess humans in our bodies can't really comprehend what that would even be like. I can't really picture what that experience would be, but so that means you were able to see behind you, in front of you, above you, and below you, all at the same time.
So that's when I connected to my physical body. And then I felt like buckets of love. I mean, the feeling was just like comfort and love. And it just was something. So I woke up and I wrote it all down, because I went, oh my God, I finally did it. I got an out of body experience, that way. And to segue from that, because see, all this happens in your mind. It happens in like metaphysically, when you have these out of body experiences. So the tendency is to come back for a lot of people and go, I think I just made that up, or was my imagination, or was it even real? And that experience changed me so much. Changed the way I looked at everything, because it was proof to me that we're more than this body. But like anything, after 20,
and why
30
would
years,
you say it's proof? Why do you think it was not imagination? Is there some tangible reason, or just?
well, it didn't feel like something. It didn't feel like I closed my eyes and just imagined something. There was so much feeling. There was so much love that I felt. And it was seeing something that was otherworldly. It was not like here. And it was it's just kind of a knowingness. And I think a lot of people have the near death experiences. They'll say that. They says, unless you have the experience, it's kind of hard to say, but there's something in you that resonates that this is real, But about 40 years later, I've had told the story so many times and everything. And my mind was going, is this really real? I mean, come on, God. I mean, I know people that were meditating and they'd open their eyes and there would be a guru or something in their room that they could actually talk to. They could touch, and they would come and go and disappear and things. And I went, if I could have something like that, I'd know that that thing that happened 40 years ago was really real. So a few weeks later, I'm performing a ventriloquist magic show. I was an entertainer for so many years at a fair. And right after my show, they had a guy come up that was a Columbia State Park docent who was dressed like an old miner from when the gold miner. And he would tell all these stories about, he would give all these stories about the 1800s and stuff. We became friends. When I was leaving, after 4 days of performing, he said, Carl was his name. He says, hey, why don't you and your wife come up and visit me for a little while? So we did that. Anyway, long story short, we had a nice weekend with he and his wife, and we didn't talk about God or anything spiritual. I'm getting in my car, Liz. And just as I'm getting in my car, I feel a hand on my shoulder. I turned around and Carl says to me, I think you're supposed to tell me about that. He called it a dream you had. Now, this is 40 years after I had that golden yellow sky, massive trees there. And instinctively, when he said about the dream, I just said to him, what color was the sky? He said, yellow. And I said, what was I looking at? He says, you were looking at these magnificent, big, huge trees. Liz, I got weak-kneed and started to faint. It was so weird. He caught me, took me back inside. And all the time I'm thinking, oh my God, I asked God for some proof that was not my imagination. And here's this guy, random stranger. Well, anyway, when he took me back inside, he says, Regan, I can't even tell you how this works. He says, but I seem to be the keeper of this meaning of this dream or this out-of-body experience that people have. And he said, did you have the second dream yet? And I go, I don't know. What is it? He goes, I can't tell you, but if you had it, you'd probably know. To this day, I can't say that I had it. But so after that, I just looked to God and I said, okay, I'm doubting Thomas here. I want to put my hand in Jesus's wound to see if it's really him that's there, and so that to me was like proof, because God said, okay, you doubting little guy, I'm going to show you that that's really real that you had. So that was in my 40s, but now I'm 75, and all this stuff, the hundreds of people that I've helped to visit the afterlife in this process. Now, some of them, after a week or two, they go, man, that was just something. I got so many answers and everything, but was that my imagination or, and I said, you got to figure that out, because it just kind of happens. It's kind of people in the session, Liz, they become like mediums, where they can just see images in their mind, and they have to trust that they're real.
So I have a few questions. First of all, you do use the word God. How do you find God? Because a God isn't necessary for there to be an afterlife. It just means that our consciousness is not created by a brain, but is hosted somewhere that entangles with the brain. So you personally think there is a God, or it's a word you're comfortable with? I guess it means different things to different people. What does it mean to you?
in this research that we're doing, we're finding out, because when people are there in heaven, a couple of them said, okay, I'm here. Let me see God, whatever. And they just go, he's, like even in this place in heaven, God is just indescribable. It's this energy. They just feel love. They said they feel the presence of whatever this energy is. So God is not like a human being or a form like that. It's just a consciousness. It goes way beyond even heaven. It's so big. So the second time I was there in the afterlife, that's one of the questions I asked. I said, why are you allowing us to bring people here? And I said, is this it? I mean, we've discovered 6, what we call them stations, or 6 different things in the afterlife that people can experience. But my guide at the time, he jumps up he was on the council, like he was sitting in a chair, and he jumps up when I says, is this heaven? Is this all there is? And he jumped up and went like, you haven't seen anything yet, So this is kind of like Heaven 101. And I asked them, I says, okay, now why are you allowing people to come here? They said, the world is going through a really great change right now. And we really want people to really get working on what their mission is, what they came down to do to make the world a better place. The earth could really use that right now. So we want people to prove to people that the afterlife is a real place. It's a real thing. We want to prove to them that they're never alone, because everybody meets their guide. They get on a first name basis with their guide or angel, who's ever kind of watching over them. And they want them to know that their life has meaning and purpose. It's, in other words, they're here for a reason. Okay. They said if people understand those 3 things, that's all they need to know. Now it's time to get to work. Just like this podcast you're doing, Liz, you're allowing so many people to learn so many things about so many great things that otherwise they wouldn't see. So you're a light worker and I'm a light worker. We're just saying we're just regular people.
It's funny to think of myself as a light worker, because I'm still like, I'm an atheist. I'm like, I think consciousness is downloaded by a brain instead of created by one, but I'm like, I don't even consider myself spiritual, so I'll take. Well, that's hilarious. I always laugh when I hear it, but I so appreciate it too.
Yeah.
So
people, I say atheists are just people that haven't got the right information yet, because there's so much misinformation out there. There's so many things that kind of don't make sense. Okay. So like I say, Dr. Newton was an atheist, but he became over the years a complete believer that there is an afterlife.
Well, I think there's an afterlife. I just don't think there's any God, or I haven't seen any evidence I go by the extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Consciousness being non-physical is extraordinary. And now I've seen extraordinary evidence for that, but I haven't seen any tangible evidence of what could be called a God, just that our consciousness is stored in a non-physical bank, I guess is how I would probably most likely define it. So I don't know though. I mean, I don't know. I just haven't seen evidence. So.
Well, in a way, with your terminology there, I think you're kind of correct, because as we're finding out, God is just consciousness. It's just what's there, and it's about love, and so I know for me, having the experience, the best I can say that at the very least what it did is it kind of softened my sharp edges, Nice. So I see people differently. I seem to be more acceptable of people's foibles and things, because I realize we're all kind of screwed up. We're trying to learn how to day, and somehow instinctively we know that when we get up in the day, we really in our deep self, we want to put more pluses on the board and not so many minuses, and that's how I've always looked at me. I go, well, I'm still a mess, but okay, if I look back 5 years ago, I'm way better than that, and way better than when I was 20 years ago with putting pluses on the board, that way. But when I was on the other side, I saw my mom, my dad, and my brother. And it was...
This is your first time you went. That's actually what I was going to ask you. Tell us, so you were a soldier on your deathbed, then you went to the other side. You went through a tunnel, and then, then what happened after you went through the tunnel?
I went through the tunnel to get to to get to the past life. And then when I passed away, I'm out of my body. and then I turn around and there's Rebazar, which I recognize because he had already appeared to me in some out of body experience I've had sporadically when I was praying or in deep prayer, thing that had happened. So I went, oh, because I didn't know. I says, am I going to see Jesus? Am I going to see Buddha? Am I going to see whatever? So the highlight of my session actually. Well, there's a council. Everybody gets to the council. They're always unique to every person. And the council members, sometimes I've had a few where there's just one, but generally there's 3 or 4 or 6. Some people have had 12 or more. And what they do is they just say, okay, what questions do you have? We're happy to help you. And they'll answer questions about your love life, about your job. They'll clarify what your mission is and why you decided to be born, what you hope to learn and teach. Most people are going to find out that they're right in the middle of their mission. They just weren't conscious of it. It was they're just kind of going through it because that's where they were led. For me, and doing this work, this is why I love doing the work, because when I was through in this, wherever this place is in the afterlife, I was coming back, I was above the earth and I was looking at how beautiful it looks just floating in space. And it's just so pretty. It's just this beautiful thing. So my guide, Rebazar, says, are you sure that you want to do this mission, this work? And I knew he meant what I'm doing right now. Okay. And I'm in trance, but something so deep in me screamed at him. And I said, F the word, yes. I said, yes, like this. And I thought, oh my God, I just said the F word in Europe, but it came from so deep in me. And I was like, wow,
If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was 0 chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF just happened.
So then we get a little bit closer to the earth, and here I'm in trance, and I start feeling all this. I feel like I was getting sick, like all this. I was feeling all this emotional pain. And so Rebazar stopped me and he says, Regan, now that you've opened yourself up to do this work, you're becoming more empathic and you're beginning to feel other people's stuff. He says, if you're going to do this work, I'm going to tell you 4 things to do. If you don't do them, your physical body won't handle it and you'll die. So I said, okay, let's just hold on a minute here, So what he told me was 4 things to do to keep my body, because it's energy, it's not negative or positive, it's just energy that's going through my body by doing this work, and our physical bodies can just handle so much. Okay, so he says, when you wake up, the image that I saw in my mind, Liz, as he says, you'll be doing this work and you'll physically die. I saw the image he showed me in my mind was an hourglass, where you have sand going in the top and it goes through to the bottom, And I saw myself, it happened so fast. So I saw myself seeing clients and the sand kept piling up and piling up and piling up, but it wasn't going through to the bottom. And I realized if that sand got to the top, I'm history, So as he's telling me the 4 things to do, I started seeing sand going down to the bottom. That was kind of the visual image he showed me. 4 things. He says, when you wake up, and this will help anybody listening, because I think this is about just life. He says, when you wake up, declare yourself as the vehicle for good and love. In other words, you wake up and you go, okay, I'm ready to do good today. What do you need me to do? And then I heard a prayer in my mind, which is pretty cool. It says, bless this day and those that I serve as I keep 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot planted firmly on earth to accomplish my mission. So it was just like setting the tone for the day. Second thing, he said, spend more time in nature, Regan. He says, nature is God's gift to all of us here to take the rough edges off of you, to calm you, to heal you. Okay. Third thing, he said, do as many random acts of kindness as you can during the day. And I saw myself in my mind. I was at a 7-Eleven store and someone threw a Snickers wrapper on the ground and I picked it up, put it in the trash. And that I saw sand going down. Okay. That just represented doing random acts of kindness. 4th thing, he says, do something practical. He says, talk to a lot of other therapists and ask how they ground themselves. Okay. And so those four things, and I've been relatively good at a lot of that. It's kind of keeping me. Although recently I did like 8 sessions in like 9 days. When I went to Los Angeles, I'm in the San Francisco area, but I travel to LA 3 or 4 times a year. So 2 times when I was down there, I'm in the session and my client says, Regan, my guide wants to talk to you. And I go, oof, this is really weird. All of a sudden you realize someone from the other side is wanting to talk through my client to me. And both of them within 4 or 5 days said, slow down, Regan, you're doing too much, Uh, and then what was the kicker on that? I went to a soul search little convention where they have psychics and mediums and they have all kinds of speakers and stuff that have had out-of-body experiences and all that stuff. I've heard that twice from my clients. I said, okay, I got to slow down, but I'm kind of gets through to me slow sometimes. So a few days after my client that said that, I go to this thing. I'm walking in a room. There's a medium up in front giving a talk. And just as I'm sitting down, she looks over at me and says, they're telling me you need to slow down, sir. So that was like, wow, okay, I got it, kind of thing like that. So what also happens too, when so many people that have this experience, they say, and people that have near-death experiences, the same thing, where all of a sudden their life becomes more synchronistic. Little miracles happen, little changes. They meet people that they just out of the blue that somehow they realize they need to meet or have a conversation with or something like that. But let me tell you the biggest thing, after I saw my mom, my dad, my brother over there, and it was like they were just in another room and I'm going from one room to another and they were just sitting in there. And my dad smiled at me and my mom gave me this most beautiful smile. And there was my brother just sitting around doing stuff. And I went, hey, and I was with my guide. We went, and, walking through to the next thing. The biggest thing that happened to me that really changed me the most was, okay, just after he told me those 4 things to do, all of a sudden, I'm seeing the earth, but all of a sudden, I'm not seeing the earth anymore. I'm standing at the top of a mountain on a cliff. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my God, about 40 years ago, I had this awakening experience. Okay, let's see, so it didn't get confusing here. So way back when I'm younger, I go to sleep, have a dream where I'm in an airplane crash on an island. I'm a survivor. Me and a few other people get out of the plane. We're wondering what to do. All of a sudden, there's this evil force that we feel, like a monster, like a Godzilla or something's going to kill us. So we run, and we run up this mountain. And it's like one of those cartoons, like, all the way to the top. And I'm running for my life, and I feel so much fear, and people are screaming. And I think whatever's going is going to kill me. I get to the very top. There's no place to go. I look down, and there's clouds below me. And up from the cloud comes this Pillsbury doughboy hand, this big white hand, a friendly kind of, I knew I had a choice. It was in my mind. I could jump to this hand to be saved, or something in my mind says I could turn around and face this fear. And I screamed, I'm going to face this fear. And then it was like someone put a pause button, Liz, and I woke up and I shook my wife awake and I went, oh my God, I never remember a dream. I think that's some sort of test about facing my fear or something like this. Okay. So now 45 years I'm coming back from the afterlife and I'm seeing the earth. All of a sudden I'm on that same cliff and it's like somebody undid the pause button. And so I see that same hand coming up and I tell the facilitator, he says, well, jump to its safety. And I had decided at that moment to turn around and face my fear. Whatever was chasing me. And then I woke up thinking, wow, I felt good because it felt like, wow, that's pretty cool that somehow my consciousness decided to start facing my fears. So anyway, fast forward 40 something years, I'm coming back from being in heaven. And I find myself on that same cliff. And my facilitator, said, jump to the hand of safety. And I said, no, I'm going to turn around and face my fear. I turned around and all of a sudden there's this man smiling at me about 2 inches from my face, and he says, I forgive you. I love you. And then I look behind him and there were people all the way down this mountain lined up to do the same thing. So I'm in trance. Now, this is what made it so real to me, because the emotion that I felt was so real and so, so I'm in trance, but I'm crying my eyes out because all these people are saying, I love you, I forgive you, I love you, I forgive you. And we get down to the very last one. And there was this little girl, she was about 9 years old, maybe, had this beautiful, straight, long brown hair with these beautiful kind of angelic eyes, like some children have, that just, you can, so soulful. And she looks at me and says, I love you, I forgive you. And I'm thinking, like, what the heck did I do to this poor little girl? But at my Regan self, now. So then all of a sudden, I'm back in space and coming back, and they brought me out of trance. But that experience alone was worth the price of admission, Liz, because it felt like a tank was lifted off of me, and I believe it happened because I'm going to do this work that I'm doing. They wanted me to be a clear channel for spirit. They wanted me to not have all of that baggage that was still on me from crap that I did from other lifetimes or something, So that was good. There's so much to this.
Did you ever find out who that little girl was, or who any of the people were who said, I forgive you?
Yep, I think I did. And that was when I was doing a session. It's just funny because that happened 8 years ago. And finally, I was doing a session talking to somebody, and it clicked who that was. That little girl was probably my daughter when I was that Roman soldier. Because when I thought about it, when she was at my deathbed, instead of being 8 or 9 years old, she was like in her 30s, but still had that long, same hair, brown hair going down to her waist. And I bet you it was for, who knows, when I was that soldier, and maybe I left her or did something or whatever, that I had harmed her in some way. And I think that's what it was. And that gave me some solace, like, oh, okay, finally, I made up for some crap that I did, then. So let me give you another take on past lives, because there's so many people say, look, it says in the Bible, we just live once, whatever, and that's actually true. We just live one time, because we're finding out on this research list where we're created is over there, not here. In other words, there's a thing in the Bible that says, when you were in the womb, I already knew you, or something. I already know you,
Okay.
We're created from source. And so we're created one time, we're one soul, but we're just having many experiences. It's like an actor who's one person, but he decides, hey, I'm going to go do this play. And then after that's done, I'm going to go play this part. I'm going to play this part. And you learn from all of that, So in a sense, people are right. We have just one life, but it's one life with many bodies, that way.
And do you think that life ends? Does it end, like, say, at the big crunch when our sun dies out and our planet dies? Or do you think it goes on eternally?
Well, the way the research looks now is that we're eternal souls, and we always have been and always will be. It's when people leave this body where we have all this emotion and all these attachments and everything like this, it's a different story. Like people say, oh, this life was so awful. Well, because when I have people go to a past life, most of the past lives people have are ordinary. We call them digging potatoes lives. I've had a few people that were like in, high ups in some governments, ancient governments and things like this, but nobody that was Cleopatra or, that kind of thing. It's usually just, and some people afterwards say, well, I know I didn't make that up because that was boring. I was just in this field, I was in this field.
Yeah.
It kind of thing. That's, if I'm going to make up a life, it's going to be exciting, or I'm going to be somebody important, but there's always seems to be a lesson there. So for people that we see hypnosis, a lot of people say, well, people are so suggestible, which we are, okay, in this process. And your imagination, like in this process, plays a part, Liz, because imagination is like kindling that starts a fire. So in these sessions that I do with people, and they're about 5 hours long, okay, the first half of the session, we're going over their homework, finding out who they want to see, what questions they want to have answered. We take a bathroom break, and then we do the hypnosis part. So the first part of that, the induction, is guided meditation. Like, I'm suggesting to them that they feel their body getting relaxed. We have them go to an island to wake up all their senses, where they're smelling and sensing and feeling, and that. But when they get to the afterlife, or when they get to a past life, it switches from me suggesting to me asking them what they're seeing, and just open-ended questions, so that they're telling me what they're seeing. I'm not suggesting to them what they see. Okay. So that's when it kind of shifts. But a lot of times it's the emotion that's attached to that. It's a certain, like, oh boy, I had a man named Robert last year, and he was a woman in another lifetime. I had him go to an important event, and he's in trance on my couch, my therapist couch here. And all of a sudden he's going, oh, ah, oh. I said, what's happening? He says, I'm having a baby. It was something. So afterwards, he says, oh my God, Regan, that was like so weird. You had me go, and all of a sudden, man, I'm experiencing having a baby. He says, how do women do it? I'm never going to make fun of a woman again, because he had that experience with a woman in that lifetime. And we find out sometimes, on the other side, sometimes we're male in some lives, sometimes we're female. One question I ask a lot of clients is, when you incarnate, do you regularly choose to be a female or male? And a lot of souls they go, a lot of them have a preference for the sex that they are in this lifetime. They go, oh no, always female. Says, I don't like being the male energy. It's too brutal, or something like that. Okay, this just came to my mind now, because this was the biggest thing that I think is so cool that people can do in a life between life process. When you decided to be yourself, Liz, okay, you didn't put all of your soul self into Liz's body. You kept about half of it back home, which means that everybody has a higher self that's always in the afterlife, okay? In the sessions, what that means is not only can you have conversations with people that passed on, but you can have conversations with the higher selves of people still alive in your life now. That's mind-blowing. Like, I had a few people come to me for couples counseling. There was a husband and wife. They were in regular counseling, and they just couldn't get out of this. They were butting heads, but they loved each other, but they didn't know how to get beyond that because they were both being so stubborn. So one day I had her go to the other side. She talked to his higher self and said, what the heck's going on here? And they did some talking. The next day, vice versa. And the third day I had him come back for his regular counseling. And I said, okay, what did you, I knew what they both learned because I recorded it all, and they just said, they looked at each other and just kind of, we got work to do. We got to get some work done here, and it really helped them to get past that roadblock, because they found out, and I don't remember the exact thing, but they had been working on the same problem in several lifetimes. And they decided to come down here to do it and get it finalized, that way. So that was interesting. And then they had actually, after doing both of them, they said, can you do a session for our daughter? I said, how old is she? She says 10 years old. And I said, well, we really don't do kids, because if they go to another lifetime and there's some trauma in there, a 10-year-old, human child doesn't know how to process all that. They're too young. They don't know how to process that. But they said, well, ever since she's 3 years old, she's told me that she was stabbed to death in the back of a car, and that's been haunting her even till she's 10 years old. She can still telling me, says, yes, Mom, somebody stabbed me in the back of a car, and that's how I died. And so I said, okay, if you both come and be in the room, we'll just tread lightly. So the 10-year-old came in. She went right into trance. All of a sudden, she's a man named George in another lifetime, has several kids and a wife, and has having a beautiful life. So the parents are sitting there, I'm there, and here's this 10-year-old as George talking about George's life, so George passes away in that lifetime, but we didn't get any answers about this knife thing. So there's an angel there. And the way she described, she's this 10-year-old, she's kind of angelic looking. Just, I can still see her now. It just makes me, I wonder, she'd be about 18 right now, years old, and how she's turned out. But so beautiful, young lady. And so an angel appears. She was able to describe the angel. The angel was very motherly and very, very holding her. And so we asked the angel, we said, okay, the reason we're doing this is because she said to her parents, she got stabbed to death in the back of a car when she's, in another lifetime. And the angel says, yes, that's true. He says that really happened. She even gave us that says it was in Europe. It was in like in 1946, 1948, something like that. And she says to the 10-year-old, she says, but that was another lifetime. You're totally safe now. There's nothing you have to worry about in this lifetime about that. And so she's in trance, and I can just see her face becoming calm. And she's just going, like, okay. And then before that was over, the very last thing the angel said to her says, that man who stabbed you I said, ask the angel why that happened. And the angel says, she doesn't need to know that now. She's too young to understand, but it was necessary. Something was necessary for that man and for you. So then the angel finished up by saying, that person who did that bad thing to you in that other lifetime is going to be coming back into this lifetime with you to make amends for the wrong that he did to you. So there's nothing to worry about. So when I brought her out of trance and she's just smiling, I said, how do you feel now? She goes, oh, I feel good now. It was a great experience. So hopefully that took that thing from that past life that had been dogging her whole life and helped her to just relax about that. So much healing can happen when people, like in this lifetime, there's a lot of things that happen, but sometimes some of the things that we're afraid of, or that something happens, we can trace back to other lifetimes when it happened. Now, here's a real weird thing that happened. I mean, this is so cool. I'm also have a credential with quantum healing hypnosis, which is Dolores Cannon's school, and her and Michael Newton were contemporaries. And they didn't know that until they ran into each other later and found out they're getting the same results, doing thousands of things. Okay. But with Dolores Cannon's school, you concentrate on human healing, on healing of things. Okay. So I'm actually with both there. What I found out is, it gets me off on this tangent, because in a life between life process, I put them both together. So after people get their questions answered by the council, I say, my client has some health issues they'd like to address. Can the higher self do a body scan, or do you have a healer here that would be able to do it? Most of the time they say, we have somebody here. And instantly there's somebody in front of my client and they're in trance. I'll have them describe to me, well, what does this healer look like? We'll ask for a name. And then we'll start discussing the health issues. One thing people get that's so helpful is the fact that they get the reason why they have their health issue. And it's usually for some reason that they've made themselves sick because of either they've got too much anger, not enough self-love, they're having a hard time forgiving people for things, they think they're not good enough, things like this. But sometimes the very first time I did it, I had a woman come in with a cane. She was limping. And so she's in trance. We asked, why does she have this frozen hip? And they told her, it's because you're about ready to retire and you're so afraid of what you're going to do when you retire, because you're losing all your friends at work. You're going to have to be around your husband more. They were joking about that, but it's like, what are you going to do? So they had about a 10-minute conversation with her about no need to fear. Your life's going to be great and everything like this. So then I said to the healer, I said, well, can you do a healing for her? And they said, yes, I think she understands now. That's going to be okay. She's going to be able to do this. So she's on my therapy couch, and all of a sudden she's moving around, and a big old loud pop, and her hip went right back in place. And she walked out here with, she's going, oh my God. And that blew my mind. I have another woman, she's 84 years old and had stage 4 rectal cancer. This has been 2.5 years ago now. She emails me every once in a while, says, Regan, I'm still alive. I'm still doing that thing you had. Says, the doctor says my cancer's kind of there, but it's not doing anything, but the thing that I started this with was, now this isn't my case, but this is one of the documented cases with quantum healing that happened. A person, she had a big birthmark halfway down her neck on I don't know, it was the left or right side. So she goes to a past life. She finds herself, gets hung. She was, hung for whatever she did. Well, just having that knowledge, she came back, and a year later, she sends a picture of her neck, and her birthmark had disappeared. It was no longer there. So that's, for that person now, Liz, that's kind of like, okay, that is real. Okay, that was something, but that was all documented. Also, too, another person that I met when I was going through the training, she went to Dolores Cannon as a last-ditch effort because she had cancer all over her body, and she was supposed to die any time. So she goes, well, I have nothing to lose. Dolores Cannon gave her a session, and this person listened to her recording. She says, I listened to it every day for weeks and weeks and weeks. Anyway, long story short, this is 15 years later. She became a Dolores Cannon therapist also, and she's still alive. She said all of her cancer. Yeah.
That's
so
and that's all. That's fascinating about the healing. And yeah. I have a question about some of the past life regressions, or maybe the life, between lives going to the other side. Have you ever traced any and gotten evidence or verification of anyone's stories, like matched them up with a personality, or just what would you say is the most evidential verified experience you've had, either yourself or with a client?
Yeah, we talked about that at the conference, and we're in 45 countries now. When I was in Barcelona recently, and there was people, it was so neat meeting people, because we're so by ourselves. We're so like these solo things, but then when you get together with these other ones, it was beautiful. So many beautiful therapists. Oh my gosh, nice people. So we talked about that, and someone said, yeah, maybe we should start, doing some more research on that. But it seems to be incidental when people have this experience. It's like, well, whether they lived before, if this is true or not, they go to the afterlife, get all this stuff, and it doesn't seem to be important. But I'll tell you, one that we came real close to, one of my clients. Okay, this is a woman. She came to me because she has severe post-traumatic stress. I have a regular, for people watching now too, I have a regular hypnotherapy practice, and I specialize in women that have rape, incest, and violence. Okay. It's so, Liz, it's hard for me to hear these stories sometimes. So anyway,
I'm sure, yeah.
Just severely, just imagine kidnapped at 12, taken to the desert. She escaped. She's a Playboy centerfold when she's older, stalker, spent a weekend in her apartment torturing her, left her for dead, but she survived. That's just, I know it's the tip of the iceberg with her, and I don't want to traumatize everybody by telling you, but when she came to me, I thought, boy, she's way beyond my pay grade. I mean, how the heck am I going to help her? But again, I've kind of learned, Liz, if God sends me somebody, anyway, we've just, I told her this process that we can go through. I said, we maybe can find some answers if we do it, but it was kind of, to her, it was like, oh, that's the devil. Hypnosis is the devil, and Satan and all this kind of stuff, But as we built rapport over a few months, she finally came to me and says, can we try that thing, that you said, where I could maybe go to the afterlife? So I did in the past life regression with her. She goes out the tunnel the other side, and we're now, she says, oh, giving a speech. I'm on stage, and there's just like, it's weird. It's just like all these women, and there's a couple of guys here, but there's all of a sudden she goes like this. That's what happened. She says, that man just threw a tomato and it hit my shirt, hit my clothes. It's all over me. And she says, that's okay. I'm going to keep giving my speech. So it was interesting because I could see her in trance. She's got hit by a tomato by a man. So we pushed that further. I said, well, do you have a job? She says, yes. I says, where do you work? She goes, it's the Boston. It was either Boston Herald, Boston Globe, or Boston something. I said, what year is it? And she goes, 1888, I think. She went to the Boston Globe. She had a desk there. There was another woman she was with. I had her go to another important event, and she goes, well, I'm in school. And she's looking around. She goes, this is weird, because the part that's aware that we're going through this says, I'm the only woman in the class. I said, where are you? She said, Harvard. Okay. So afterwards, we, unbeknownst to her, I said, this is Harvard and this, that. So I went back and I did some research, and the name that she said of whatever the Boston was called at that time was the actual name. It was only that for about 10 years, and they changed it to something else. In 1888, 1886, it was the first time that newspaper hired women as reporters to work on the suffragettes thing, women's rights. Okay. So that was something that when I told her, she goes, wow, I don't know anything about that. I don't know Boston anything or something like this. Okay. So I did another regular therapy session for her. I said, let's go back and explore a little bit more. So I took her, we went back in trance again. And only this time she found herself as a stripper. She was dancing for soldiers. Okay. It seemed like World War II, like in the 50s or something. And she's in trance and she goes, lots of sex. But what was happening is her husband was pimping her out, getting money for having a dancer. So she didn't like it. She was being abused, that way. But she's forced into it. I said, what's your name? And the name, she said, we looked up later and there was a stripper named that. We couldn't get any pictures. But what happened was eventually she stabs her husband to try to get away from him because she finally can't take it anymore. She runs to her friend Martha, who has a restaurant in New York City called, I forget it now, it was called Martha's something garden or something there. So afterwards, because we had some facts from that last life she went to, we looked it up, and darned if there wasn't a restaurant at that same time in the 50s called Martha's something restaurant. Okay. And there was, a lot of these women were at the clubs for the military people and all that stuff, So that's as far. I couldn't get a specific name and that sort of thing. But for her, that was enough to go, maybe there is something to this, because that's just too many coincidences, Now, for people that want proof, there's a book that came out called Before. It's called Before by Jim Tucker. He's from the University of Virginia. I don't know if you have had anybody on from you. They've been studying.
I'm interviewing. Yeah, I've interviewed some people, and some episodes will be coming out soon. And Dr. Jim Tucker's one of my favorite people. I hope to have him on too at some point as well. So
because in that book, these are children that remember past lives. Okay, just like the one I was talking about earlier. Children remember past lives, where they've been able to send researchers out to find out that exactly what the children said, somebody by that name in that area, how they died and everything actually existed. So that says, because the university, we've actually talked to the university, and they says, well, still we want to keep this pure. We don't want to have hypnosis or anything, because it's just going to be about kids, that way, because they figure they haven't, how could kids know all this when they're 3 years old, kind of thing like that. So, but the book's called Before. It's great for people to kind of go, oh, I don't know if I believe this, but maybe something's going on out there, What I would suggest to people, if people want to do this, we do it on Zoom or in person. If they go to the newtoninstitute.org, there's a whole list of the 250 of us on there. And I usually tell people, we'll go down until you see a picture that resonates with you. That's probably who you need to use. I'm happy to help people, of course. But, we just want people to have the experience if they can. On my site, which is visittheafterlife.com. That's real simple. Visittheafterlife.com. I have 6 different videos on there under Life Between Lives. There's also videos under Past Life Regression, and there's some really good videos on traditional therapy. When I've done some of these podcasts, people have called me and says, I have, or my daughter, my husband has PTSD very bad. Again, Liz, I'd be happy to do another show for you sometime, Liz, on talking about all these new energy psychology things that work. Talking therapy can take forever. But when you learn how to manipulate the stuck energy that people have from the traumas they've had, oh my gosh, EFT, which is tapping, it's kind of gone viral now. Once Harvard proved that there's a beneficial physiological effect on the human body when people tap, it's like psychological acupuncture. That really helps. There's something called Havening Touch, which is the new kid on the block. They're having, and also EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization.
I know a lot of you have heard me talk about the Forever Family Foundation. They were absolutely instrumental in helping my grief and in changing my view of the probability of an afterlife. They use science-based testing to certify psychic mediums, have a scientific advisory board, and they host grief retreats. They will be hosting a special grief retreat this October in California, only for parents who have lost a child. The founders, Fran and Bob Ginsberg, who have become like parents to me, although Fran sadly passed in 2020, started the foundation after the passing of their daughter, Bailey, so helping grieving parents is dear to their hearts. This retreat will have psychic mediums and speakers. While they host many grief retreats during the year, having been through it themselves, they understand the unique type of grief and the safe environment needed for those who have lost a child. For more information and to sign up, go to foreverfamilyfoundation.org. I'll also have the link to this retreat in the show notes.
And reprogramming. And I've had people that have been to talking therapy over 30 or 40 years, year after year after year, and they still fall apart when they think about their trauma. And usually in 3 or 4 sessions, Liz, I can have them have a sense of normalcy back in their life again. For instance, a man came to me, he was sleeping, his son came in and shot him in the head when he was sleeping. And the bullet went in his ear, came out here instead of going up in here. So that saved his life.
It came out his other ear. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It came out his cheek. Went in
his
and
cheek. Okay.
Got a big scar. He was an ex-gang member and he'd been in prison for a number of years, and he's in his 40s now. And he showed me, lifted up his face, he says, show me some of the bullet holes he had from these gunfights he'd had. He says, I've been in 6 gun battles, shot 6 times, and I didn't die. My car was stuck on a railroad track and I couldn't get off, and I completely demolished my car. I walked out without a scratch. Said I had one little cut. And then my son shoots me in the head and I don't die. He says, and then he found Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls, and he read it and he goes, okay, I gotta find out what the heck I'm doing. Why am I still alive? Well, anyway, his son was trying to get in gangs now. And so he was being hard ass on his son. Don't you do it. So you're gonna screw up your life just like I did, And of course, son's 20 years old, What do you know, Dad? Kind of thing. So they got in a fight and the son tried to kill him. Well, the sad thing was 2 weeks later, because he didn't turn him into the police, his son died of a drug overdose. So he lost his son that he loved. And he has that memory. So when I had him close his eyes, Liz, and I says, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being this energy in your body that's crazy, 10's the worst it can be, 1, you're okay with it. He says, I'm a 23. I'm a 23, So he had come to me for a life between life session, but when I had him to go in trance, he went from the beta state, which we're in right now, he went all the way down to Delta in about 3 minutes, and I couldn't even wake him up. I shook him. I talked to him. He was just knocked out. So he just slept for about 2.5 hours on my couch, and he finally came out of it. So anyway, I said, and come to find out, it's because he was doing meth. He's still doing meth, and he'd been up for 2 or 3 days. So he just crashed, So anyway,
yeah.
I know your issue here. Let's just do some regular therapy to try to help you with that 23 that you're at with your son there. So in a matter of, I would say 20 minutes, as we have people talk about their issue, we're having them tap on different meridians of their body. And I had him close his eyes and check in with himself again. And it was the most weirdest look on his face, because he's trying to feel like it's 23 again, but he wasn't. He says, Regan, it feels like it's only like a 4. He says, and he cussed a little bit, like, what is going on, So he came back a few weeks later. We got it to 0. 3 months later, came back still 0. He says, Regan, I don't know what the F you did, but I miss my son. I still mourn him, but I'm not like this anymore. And I said, that's what tapping does, so that it works. Same with Havening Touch, EMDR. So, but there's videos on my website on the traditional therapy. You can see 4 veterans that have severe post-traumatic stress and watch what happens after 4 days. They can't even believe it, So anyway.
Yeah, that's amazing. That poor man. Yeah.
I know. And stuff, I mean, see, I went from being I was a comedian for 30 years. And earlier before that, I was a professional clown for, did 4,000 children's birthday parties, did malls and fairs and everything like that. And then all of a sudden I was a fake motivational speaker for a while, where companies would have me come in as a professional on some subject, but it would just be to play a joke on the people. And it was so much, I was like an imposter, kind of thing.
That sounds like so much fun.
I'll tell you, I can't, they're paying me like $5,000 to come in to do this. So I can't give it up, or I can't let anybody find out. It's a lot of pressure, so sometimes I'm with the company in their event, and I'm all day long talking to people about this, because I study the product and service, so I can talk about it, but I'm supposed to come up with new innovations and things like this, but the innovations turn out to be weird and crazy, and people think you're nuts, and then they joke. But anyway, so then I was an actor in Hollywood for 12 years. So I did movies, and then I moved to Mexico for 2 years to do therapy for some people, and then became this now in my old age. I've been doing this for 10 years. So God has a way. People like listening to this. You look back at your life and you go, why did that happen? Why did this happen? But it's kind of made us who we are now. Like 20 years ago, you wouldn't have thought you'd be doing a podcast doing this. It's like
no, not at all, to say the least.
I know.
Yeah. So with the other side, do you think there are multiple other sides, like multiple dimensions of consciousness, not just this one and one other? There's all different states and multiple dimensions, not just two.
Yeah. Because when I asked that question, is this it over here? And he goes, you haven't seen anything yet. I think this is just a glimpse to prove to people's afterlife, because from the research we've done, so, not everybody even incarnates. Some souls have never incarnated. They're just working, in a sense, behind the scenes, doing things, helping with creation, helping, but what's good about the other side, everybody over there, it's like you would wish it would be in this world here, and how beautiful this world can be when everybody's getting along and everybody's saying, hey, what can I do for you? What do you need? And the vision I got, the vision I got in my mind one time was, as we progress with more and more understanding and get smarter, in a sense, spiritually evolve, it's our goal to kind of look down to someone who needs what we just learned, and you kind of reach down, kind of pull them up, and then you look above you and hope there's someone above you to pull you up to the next rung. So it's like, we're in this to help each other grow, in love and that. So what we found out over there, I'll just name them. Maybe on another show we can go in more detail, but what my clients experience, they go to a past life, pass away, see their guide. We get introduced to their guide. So that's a big thing, because some people go, oh my God, I can just, this is so great, because now they have a face to put to know, and it makes it more real. They usually get to go to a place of rejuvenation. Oh gosh, I have so many stories on that, which is so healing for people. There's a place they go and they can just feel their whole body. One person described, he says, I feel like my body's like a billion BBs, and this energy is going through, cleaning every little BB. And they says, I don't want to leave this place. It feels so good. It's a place of healing. Then we ask the guide, can we go to ask questions of the council, or can my client here go to the soul group, where they can talk to mom and dad, whoever's passed away, and higher selves of people. So those three things, about 90% of the time, that's what happens. Everybody goes through like the same experience, but it's different, unique to them, because they're a unique person with unique problems and questions and things like that. We've also found a place of recreation up there. In other words, what souls do, and it's usually, and again, too, what makes this real to people too, physics is different over there. Okay. It's not as solid as it is like here. And sometimes some more advanced souls that come to me that are, when we ask about, and we find out they're advanced in their spiritual knowledge, sometimes after they see themselves pass away, they go to the afterlife, they're just seeing everything as energy. Liz. It's just like they'll say, "Oh, there's my mom," and I'll say, "What's your mom look like?" And says, "Oh, she's just glowing purple and red and that." But in that state, it's natural, and so they recognize their mom. Sometimes, as they're talking to their parents or whoever's there, they'll appear kind of like they looked here, maybe younger than they were here, or more fit or something. Sometimes some people see them totally like in bodily form, but most of the time it's a combination of energy and coming and going from, someone who they recognize, that way. The same with the guides. Sometimes people get there and there's just this glowing ball of energy, and I'll say, "Who's that?" I say, "Oh, it's my guide," and they just recognize them as just energy. So that's what makes it real too, because people go, "That was weird. I couldn't have made that up. That was just, that was otherworldly, kind of Twilight Zone-ish." Okay. There's a place of recreation. What I love over there, Liz, is that they have these temples of like higher learning. So people have come to me that have been writers, musicians, dancers, sculptors, painters. When I find out there, I'll ask the council, I'll say, "Can my client go to a place of higher learning to get inspiration for their, what their vocation is?" They say, "Sure." One of the coolest ones was a woman in her mid-50s came to me. She's a professional dancer, Liz, very slim, very beautiful. She's been looking for a salsa partner and auditioning different men. And she goes, "I just can't find anybody to match me. And I'm so frustrated." And she says, "I'm not getting so many parts." Like she'd get parts in musicals and plays, as a dancer and things. She said, "All the young girls are getting the stuff now." So she's before the council. The first question she asks is, they says, "Why can't I get these parts anymore?" And you know what they said to her, Liz? They lovingly said, "Time to be a teacher." Because
which is important too. That's just,
So,
passing on your knowledge. It's a one, yeah.
So she's entranced. I love, because I'm watching people's faces and she's like, "Oh, I knew that, but I didn't want to hear it." They're telling her. So then, knowing that there's places to get inspiration, I says, "Ask the council, is there a place here you could go for a minute to get inspiration for dance?" And they said yes. Instantly, she's there. She's in this big ballroom, and I says, "Tell me what you're seeing." She says, "Oh, there's a couple over here, and I see them. They're doing the cha-cha, and over here there's somebody doing the waltz. Oh, and there's someone doing salsa, here." And now that confused me, because I went, "Wait a minute." I said, "What music are they listening to?" She says, "Oh, everybody's hearing the music they need for their dance." That was pretty cool. That was a good answer. So then I said, who's in charge of this place here? And he said, there was a guide there. I said, "Ask the guide, do they have a salsa teacher here?" The guide's, "Yeah." I says, "Can she meet him?" So instantly, here's this salsa guide right in front of her here that teaches people probably in the dream state, or, people that are up there, teaches them salsa. So I said, "Can she have a dance with him?" And they said, "Sure." So she goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to have a dance." So I'm just quiet and I'm watching her face, and it was so beautiful. She's like floating, just smiling and everything. I said, "Well, tell me when you're done." So a few minutes later, she goes, "Oh my God, that was the best. Oh my God, I had the best dance I've had in my life." Says, "How am I ever going to find somebody like that?" So that was a beautiful thing for her to experience over there. For me, Liz, in my journey there, I asked, "Is there a place for inspiration for music?" All of a sudden, I'm in this room. It's not real big. It was about maybe a 30 by 40 kind of room. I'm on a riser, like on stage, and I hear this beautiful violin music. And I look over, and my guide was playing the violin. And he put that down, and he says, "Regan, if you want to write music, I want you to watch what I'm going to do, and this will help you to get inspiration." He had a fishing pole, and it had about 20 hooks on it. And he took the fishing pole and went out to the audience, and he brought it back, and on the hooks were notes. Instead of fish, they had notes, music notes on them. He says, "Just think of this, and that's going to help open you up to inspiration." I was a music major in college for 2 years, but I was 19, 20 years old. I was not disciplined. I never learned how to read music. I just would improvise stuff. I was chasing girls at the time. That's all I was doing, not interested in anything else.
That's normal in college. Yeah.
A lead guitar player for a rock band in the 60s. And, we got big enough to play school dances and things like that. But then I got married and had 5 kids, so that was the end of that. But anyway, so I says, okay, I really want to write something. So long story short, I composed like 18 songs in about, 3 weeks. And I just got my first royalty check from, I forget the name of the place, for like $98. Like some of my songs were played like 22,000 times and I made $90. Wow. Like this.
That's
so,
yeah.
and now this has been a couple years and I could probably play, I don't know, 4 or 5 of those now that I remember, because I don't know how to, put it down musically, and I just was doing it, So that was kind of proof for me that, that kind of stuff's real. People can actually, this is mind blowing for some people. There's a place we've discovered over there. You can actually go back to the memory. We call it the life selection room. And you can go back to the memory of you selecting the life that you have now. And it's almost described the same, pretty much the same for everybody. It's kind of like a theater, and you're sitting there and there's guides running around and your guide is there and you're trying to decide, okay, what do I want to do? Should I be male or female? And because there's no time and space and everything, this is mind blowing, but there's no time and space. You can see the future use of who you could be. And then you choose one of them, and then everybody gets to. They don't make you. They don't say you have to go do this. Anyway, they can recommend. They can say, well, we think it would be best because then you could do this or that. But it's your final choice. You decide how much of your soul you're going to put in there, depending on how hard your life is going to be. There's even a place you go and practice with other souls who are going to be in your play down here about how you're going to meet. And I remember this one case, it wasn't mine, but this was another case that when I was first learning of this, they were going to be husband and wife, and they had to decide, okay, when we come down here, how are we going to meet? She says, okay, I'm seeing us being at a dance, it's like a dance for the army, like not UFO. There's a name they call the Officers Club, that people go to, and then they would dance. She says, you're going to be across the room. I'm going to have the scarf. I can see the color over here. And you're going to look across the room. And when I take my scarf and go over the shoulder, that's going to resonate to your soul that you need to come over and ask me to dance. And that's what exactly ended up happening in their life. That's how he met her, at a one of the army dances or something like that. So now people rehearse like that, but sometimes everything doesn't go as planned. Sometimes people walk right by who they're supposed to meet, and it doesn't happen in that lifetime, because something goes wrong, so it's not always perfect, but people at least, that's why some people go, I believe that because when I met my wife for that, it was different. It was like this something, I don't know why I was attracted to this person. It was like love at first sight. Or I just knew this was going to be my wife or something, and then they find out, that's how they met their better half,
Oh. Yeah.
So, one other place, the library. You probably had people on talk about the Akashic records and Akashic, or however you pronounce it, records.
A little
it's just
bit,
a place
not
where
that
everything
much.
you've ever been.
Okay.
Yeah, so. Every place where you've ever been or ever done is there. I've had some people go there, but generally, what happens is someone will go retrieve the information. You're sitting down, they put a book before you, and it's just pages of light. So when people are in trance, they go, well, I'm looking at all this and I feel on some level I'm seeing all this, but I can't physically tell you what's going on, but somehow that information is being downloaded into them, I think, So we just continue the research and see what we can find out over there.
I think one of the most fascinating aspects too is not only what you're hearing, but that there's such a consistency among people and what they experience.
There's a few, I have a few podcasts that are some of my favorites, but every 6 months or a year, they'll have me back on. I'll tell them what we found that's new, or go in more into detail. And because people have an insatiable curiosity, just like with the near-death experience, it's just human. We want to know, we want proof. We want to know that there's a reason for us having difficult lives, and that we're just not down here being punished for something, I'd be happy. I'm happy to talk about this all the time. So I was on the board of the Newton Institute for a while, and then it got too crazy, and I decided I just want to do sessions, and I'll help with public disclosure by doing podcasts and things. So, if people go to my site, visit theafterlife.com. Matter of fact, anybody listening, Liz, if they want a free ebook of the other book I wrote called Reincarnation is Real. It's an interactive book where you read a little bit and then you go to a YouTube video and read a little bit. And it's about a lot of the research that's currently being done on reincarnation. And it's a fun read. And I'll be happy if they just say they watched the show, WTF, and I'll send them one free. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. Oh, I'm sure everyone will appreciate that. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and absolutely fascinating stories.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_ or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?